Hey everyone. Our country is facing a massive financial crisis, and frankly, most Americans have no idea how serious it is. Our government is buried under about $37 trillion in debt. That's right, $37 trillion. President Trump had a plan to fix it that totally flopped. But now, he's got a brand new, super controversial strategy involving things like crypto and gold that he thinks will save us. Today, I'm breaking down what happened, what his new game plan is, and whether any of it has a shot at actually working. You do not want to miss this. So, how did we get here? It's actually pretty simple. Our government has a really bad habit. They spend way more money than they take in. And when you do that, you have to borrow, right? Our government borrows money by issuing what are basically IOUs. We call them government bonds. You, banks, even other countries can buy these bonds, and the government pays you interest. It sounds straightforward, but here's the kicker. Right now, our government needs to borrow a mind-boggling $11 trillion over the next year alone. About $9 trillion just to pay off old loans, and another $2 trillion to cover all their new spending. That's a huge pile of bonds they need to sell. But what if there aren't enough people willing to lend all that money at a reasonable interest rate? Then the government has to sweeten the deal, offering higher interest rates to attract more lenders. That's a nightmare for Uncle Sam. Imagine this. If the interest rate on our $37 trillion debt just goes up by 1%, that's an extra $370 billion a year that has to go just to paying interest. To put that in perspective, we spend almost $850 billion a year on defense. So an extra $370 billion? That's not small change. President Trump's first attempt to tackle this debt monster was to get our government's budget balanced. His campaign promise was clear: slash government spending, balance the books, and pay down the national debt. And to make this happen, he famously put Elon Musk in charge of an initiative called Doge. The goal was huge: cut government spending by a massive $2 trillion a year, or at least a stretch goal of $1 trillion. Considering our government spends about $7 trillion a year, that would have been an incredible feat. But here's the problem. When you suddenly pull that much money out of the economy, it has huge consequences. Government spending is a massive part of what makes our economy tick, a big piece of our country's overall health. If we drastically cut it, we'd probably crash straight into a severe recession. And what happens then? The government collects less tax money because businesses struggle and people earn less. That makes the debt crisis even worse. Plus, let's be real. Politicians and special interest groups aren't exactly thrilled about losing their funding. So, despite all the hype, Doge was an epic, colossal failure. If you check the official government websites, they might try to tell you it saved about $25 billion over 10 years. That's only about $2.5 billion each year. But honestly, most of those supposed savings were just estimated, hypothetical, or outright exaggerated. The proof is in the pudding. Our government's overspending actually got worse this year compared to last year. So the original plan, it totally failed. Time for a new approach. All right, so the first plan didn't work. Our government still has this mountain of debt, still needs to find lenders for all those bonds, and they know demand isn't strong enough to keep interest rates low. So President Trump needed a new, innovative way to drum up demand for government bonds. And this is where things get really interesting. His new plan involves cryptocurrencies. In July, the Genius Act was signed into law. This act is all about supporting cryptocurrencies to create more demand for our short-term government bonds. Let me explain how this crazy idea is supposed to work. Say you want to buy Bitcoin. You take your US dollars, exchange them for Bitcoin on a crypto exchange. Now, let's say your Bitcoin goes up in value. Awesome! But maybe you don't want to cash out back to regular dollars. Instead, you might convert your Bitcoin into something called a stablecoin. Think of a stablecoin as a digital dollar. One stablecoin is supposed to be worth exactly $1. Remember how back in the day the US dollar was backed by gold? This is similar. The Genius Act now requires that each stablecoin has to be backed by actual US dollars, or, here's the crucial part, by short-term government bonds. See what they're trying to do here? The concept is simple. If the crypto market keeps growing, there will be a bigger need for stablecoins. And if there are more stablecoins out there, those stablecoins will need more actual dollars or short-term government bonds to back them up. This, in theory, creates a massive new demand for our government's short-term bonds, which would keep interest rates low. It's a clever idea, but the big question is, will it really move the needle? Right now, the entire crypto market is worth about $4 trillion, and stablecoins specifically make up about $280 billion of that. Some people argue that this isn't nearly enough to make a real difference in the massive government bond market. But others point to the explosive growth of crypto. It's growing rapidly. So maybe, just maybe, this demand will become significant. This strategy focuses mainly on those shorter-term government bonds. But what about the longer-term ones, like the 30-year bonds? For those longer-term bonds, the government needs another trick up its sleeve. The Federal Reserve could just print money and buy the bonds, but that would look like desperation to the rest of the world and make people lose faith in the dollar. That's a last resort. So this is where gold comes into the picture. And this part is truly wild. There are whispers that President Trump might issue gold-backed government bonds. Now, don't misunderstand, we're not talking about bringing back the gold standard where our entire dollar is backed by gold. This is different. The idea is that the government would ask you to lend them money, say $4,000, and then in 30 years, they'd pay you back 1 ounce of physical gold. No interest payments along the way, just gold when the bond matures. Why would they do this? To raise desperately needed money right now without having to pay interest for decades. This idea actually comes from Judy Shelton, who was one of Trump's economic advisors. She's a big believer in gold, which, by the way, the Federal Reserve isn't a fan of because they can't print gold. But wait, there's a second and even more audacious scenario involving gold. Our U.S. government actually holds about 260 million ounces of gold. On the books, it's officially valued at just over $400 an ounce. But the real market value of gold right now, it's soaring, over $3,400 an ounce. That's a massive difference. Think of it as an untapped treasure. Here's the bombshell. President Trump could, if he wanted, revalue that gold to its current market value, or even higher. And guess what? The U.S. government has done this before, and it doesn't even require Congress's approval. He could literally do this whenever he wants. The rumor mill suggests that he might revalue our gold at an insane $15,000 an ounce. If he did that, it would instantly give the government $4 trillion free and clear. That's $4 trillion less in government bonds they'd have to sell. He could use that money to fund his initiatives or even claim he paid down a chunk of the national debt, fulfilling a campaign promise. Many people are expecting something really big to happen around July 4th, 2026, when our country celebrates its 250th anniversary. Could this be it? So, these are the plans on the table. But let's get real for a moment. This debt crisis, with its threat of higher interest rates, creates huge financial challenges for our government. And it's not just about the numbers. President Trump has talked a lot about bringing manufacturing back home to America. But think about it. If you want to build new factories, buy equipment, or invest in infrastructure, you need financing. And high interest rates make that incredibly expensive and often impossible. So getting those rates down is crucial for our economy. But here's the cold hard truth. These crypto and gold ideas, they're not real solutions to our fundamental problem. They're clever ways to try and buy time to keep the show going and to avoid dealing with the actual issue. The real underlying problem is that our federal government just spends too much money. Period. We have an overspending problem, and until that changes, these creative financial maneuvers are just temporary fixes. So, what do you think? Will President Trump's plans actually work to tackle our debt crisis, or are they just kicking the can down the road? Let me know in the comments below. I'll keep you updated on this crazy situation as it unfolds. If you found this breakdown helpful, please like this video, subscribe for more insights, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next update. Thanks for watching, and I wish you a very nice day.